I'm not sure how many of you have been seeing this, but right now there's a trend online where essentially a lot of black people are going to TikTok and are wearing quarter zips. It tends to be mainly Gen Z people doing this, and where they're essentially saying, we're recreating ourselves and we're being serious now and we're working men and all this sort of stuff. So I'll show you guys some videos and then I'll kind of give my own personal thoughts about what I think about this whole trend that is permeating social media right now. So you have like this video of this guy wearing a Nike Tech fleece and he's like transitioning from a YN to a quarter zip man. All of a sudden he's wearing boots. Let's see what else he's wearing. So what is he switching? Okay. So he has a button-up shirt. Okay. A button-up over the white t-shirt with the tucked in is crazy. Tucked in with the Basquiat tie and then the Hackett. He's even got a fancy quarter zip, the Hackett London quarter zip. That's a serious quarter zip with the leather strap watch. So this guy, this was the first video I ever saw in terms of this trend of just black people wearing quarter zips. Now, what I will say is it seems like for him, it's kind of satire, the way he's like walking on a treadmill and stuff. It is quite funny, but a lot of people have like adopted it. And now when you go on TikTok, it's become sort of like cosplay. So I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. Stuff like this.
My students how to be quarter zip men.
From the class, what's the word?
What do you mind outfit today?
This? I think I'm fly. You don't think so?
What do you know about your mission?
I don't really know some child like y'all do, so explain it to me.
La Chappelle, elaborate.
Enclosed cognition is a psychological concept, meaning what you think, feel, and act is shown in what you wear. We have on Brooks Brothers quarter zips. How y'all feel today?
I am educated.
So basically what they're doing right now, so a lot of the trends I've seen and a lot of the sort of joke I've seen on social media going around with these people wearing quarter zips is when you wear a quarter zip, you're more intelligent. You start using different vocabulary and all that sort of stuff, right? I saw a really funny video. There's a UK creator that I follow a lot where he kind of makes content that's around like social commentaries of what's going on. And I think the way that he made his video really sort of summarized the quarter zip trend and how people are behaving based on just wearing a quarter zip. So let me show you the video.
Yo, Mumsy, where's all my night techs gone?
I put them in the wash.
What? Even the one from Turkey?
Yes, even the one from Turkey.
So what's man gonna wear now?
Wear this.
Nah, Mumsy, you're tweaking, gang. Can't be seen on the roads wearing this.
So, do you like it?
What a fine addition to my garment portfolio.
I told you. You need to stop dressing.
See, this is what I mean. All of a sudden, they wear a quarter zip. Now it's like, what a fine addition to my garments portfolio. He went from talking like a roadman to sounding posh. But that's essentially like the gist of kind of people just wearing quarter zips. People are also drinking matcha. So they're ditching their coffee for matcha when they wear quarter zips. That's also part of the aesthetic. Now, I have many issues with this. Many issues. This is an issue I have with Gen Z. And to be honest, I'm Gen Z, so I'm talking about like my generation. It's not like I'm, kicking down or punching up or anything like that. But my issue with Gen Z these days, especially the younger version of Gen Z, because I'm kind of on the edge of the top, is they don't have any genuine aesthetics. Why does everything have to be cosplay? Why is everything just like no one actually embodies what they wear? When I was younger, you could tell a lot about someone based on how they were dressed. And it was actually really good. That was a really good thing because honestly, when you can tell the kind of person that someone is based on how they dress, you can become friends a lot easier because I used to touch grass when I was a kid. So if I see someone wearing skinny jeans, Nike Dunks, studded belt, shutter shades, and a plaid shirt, a plaid button up, I know, oh, this guy's into like LA, like jerkin movement, Dougie, all that sort of stuff. There's probably stuff that we can talk about just by seeing how you look. But now, because everyone kind of just cosplays aesthetics that are trending online, it doesn't really mean anything. And people don't really embody what they wear. It doesn't say anything deeper about the person other than they're just wearing what everyone else is wearing. And I think that's a massive issue I have with like fashion these days. There's just no culture embedded into it. Everything is just like a trend and cosplay. And so that's a big issue. And I think an even bigger, more sinister issue about this whole thing, I think, is kind of what that means in terms of respectability politics. And there's a video I actually want to react to by a YouTuber that I follow a lot, Omizi. You guys may or may not know him, but he's like a reaction channel and like commentary channel basically. And I really wanted to react to what he said.
We don't do Nike tag. We don't do coffee. It's straight quarter zips and matches around.
We don't do Nike tags. We don't do coffee. You drink matches and zips, gang. We don't do those type of stuff no more. And I go to school now and I read books, bro. And I go to the library. I don't do those activities no more.
So this is what I mean. This is what is so scary and I think really negative about this trend and people adopting this trend. Why are people associating dressing a certain way with all of a sudden going to the library? Does what you wear determine how, like, if you're going to go to the library or not? I wear tracksuits sometimes I don't. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop going to the library all of a sudden when I wear tracksuits and then I need to wear quarter zip to embody this sort of like arbitrary lifestyle that means that, oh, all of a sudden now I can go to the library, now I study, now I'm intelligent, now I have, an advanced vocabulary. It's just a bit stupid, to be honest.
As soon as you put on a quarter zip, you become an elitist. Any man that doesn't have one next to you is a peasant, respectfully speaking.
I just saw a white man comment, the quarter zip movement is doing more for the black community than the Black Lives Matter movement ever could. And I would just like to take this time to remind y'all that respectability politics will never save the black community.
I'm telling you right now, the CIA will not let the black community slide with wearing quarter zips.
Quarter zip trend is a recession indicator, and a stone cold post-2000s great recession indicator at that.
Over the past couple of days, the quarter zip movement has gone from being something cutesy, something to celebrate, something to be funny with, get nice and dressed up about, to something that is very anti very, very quickly. It went from being a celebration of young men showing off their different and unique styles, dibbling and dabbling into different clothing pieces and being unique, into these nasty conversations revolving around anti-blackness, respectability politics, and just overall gross sentiments, stereotypes, and overgeneralization.
Yeah, so someone is saying young black American men are teaching each other how to dress better instead of wearing Nike Techs. That's how it started. Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with wearing a Nike Tech. So this is my issue with it, right? I think if you want to be comfortable, you wear Nike Techs because Nike Techs are comfortable. They're comfortable to wear around the house. They're comfortable to go to the gym in. There's like a lot of situations where you go to a Nike Tech. So this kind of narrative that throw the Nike Techs in the bin, we associate that with, like gangsters and gang culture. I think it does more bad than it does good, in my personal opinion. And I think that there's nothing wrong with wearing a quarter zip. I think it's completely fine. But if you're just like trying to cosplay and all of a sudden you think that you're more intelligent because you wear a quarter zip, I think that's a bit stupid. And I know it did start as a joke, but I have seen some people online actually like try to embody it, which is quite funny. I also think that as an adult, as a fully grown man, 9 times out of 10, unless like you just have a really creative job, you're going to dress like that anyway, because office attire means that you have to dress like that. You have to wear ties, you have to wear suits, you have to wear buttons, you have to wear quarter zips anyway. So I don't know why people need a TikTok lesson to learn about quarter zips. I just don't think it's necessary, to be honest.
Now, as a young man myself who has been wearing stuff like Nike Techs, blazers, business casual attire for my job and all throughout elementary, middle, and high school, I feel like I'd be the perfect person to talk about as to why this whole quarter zip movement is a little bit nasty.
Prick. Watch where you walking.
What did you... Wait a minute. I'm white.
I remember growing up through the uniform era of schools where people were pushing for uniforms being a common thing in public schools, just like they were in private schools. Now, even though my school never enforced uniforms, I remember my mom making it a very, very, very strong point of contention to have me and my brother wear khakis and a polo shirt Monday through Thursday at school. We got to wear jeans on Friday. And all of it was tied to this idea that wearing some sort of business casual attire makes you a better person.
Is it just me, or is it when you put on a quarter zip that the game just changes? Like, I just feel like a different person.
See, over the past couple of years, there's been these connotations.
It's just you. It's just you, gang. It is just you.
Associated with wearing a shiesty, wearing a Nike Tech, and it's something that has been a repeat of different eras and different generations. When I was growing up, I remember it was wearing a big baggy jersey or baggy pants. I remember the conversations about wearing braids and how that was somehow tied to unprofessionalism, disgusting behavior. Hell, dreads, I think, are still attached to the connotation that it's...
So the problem with all of this to me is like, to me, at least my experience growing up, I grew up in London. Like, my issue is that it tends to be that anything that black people adopt is then considered unprofessional. So I think there is a lot of merit in black people just wearing what we wear and being intelligent wearing whatever we wear, and then people have to judge us based on our character and not based on like the assumptions that they make based on what you're wearing. And I think by this kind of trend of, you know, people being like, yeah, you should wear a quarter zip because you're respected better and don't wear, I think it kind of leans into, you know, trying to, it kind of has implications of kind of lauding what is quote unquote societally closer to whiteness, or whiteness being, you know, so associated with professionalism in that sense, and kind of chasing that. And I do think there's a massive, massive problem with that. It's kind of like giving legitimacy to tropes, modern tropes of whiteness through dress, and kind of black people chasing after that to try and be accepted by white people. That is like the energy that the trend gives to me personally. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're always going to be black. So if you think that just like wearing a quarter zip is going to automatically like give you close proximity to whiteness, then you would be wrong. So I think it's just the wrong way to go about things.
Messy, dirty, disgusting, etc., etc. But there's a common theme in all of this, and I'm going to touch on it a little bit later in the video, is that it only seems that when one community wears or does these certain things that it's attributed with these words. It's not like a universal truth, right? But nevertheless, the 2025 version of why identifying some sort of article of clothing.
Someone in the chat is saying black people have always worn quarter zip. Yeah, well, obviously. Like I said earlier, that if you have any sort of like normal office job, you probably would have worn a quarter zip. Like, it's quite normal. So that's why I don't understand the trend, because I think it just promotes like I said, like if you wear quarter zips, wear quarter zip. If that's what you wear. If you wear tech fleece, wear tech fleece. But having a trend where the focus is on YNs wear Nike Tech, serious people wear quarter zips, it kind of accelerates that stereotype that people that wear tech fleeces are people that should be profiled, right? That's kind of where it leans. And I mean, as someone that grew up in London, you would see like black people all the time get profiled by the police for a way that they dress, because, you know, certain ways of dressing is associated with like crime. So that's what I mean, is that I think kind of these kind of trends adds to that kind of idea, which is why police racially profile people in the first place based on what they wear.
Is the Nike Tech to quarter zip conversation. I'm gonna be a little bit of a hater right here. Quarter zips is like bare minimum business casual activities, to be quite honest with you. But I digress. I think that this quarter zip movement opens up the conversation of like, why is it that when black people do a certain thing, it's always labeled as unprofessional, ghetto, etc., etc. And why is it that moving off that certain thing always makes you professional or better?
Especially because, but that clothing is one thing, but sometimes it gets way more sinister. Like black people's hair, especially for black women, is really policed in society. So you see so many stories of like the military or like people that are in the office space and like very ordinary, normal black hairstyles demonized. And it's like, that's unprofessional. Why is your hair doing all of that and all that sort of stuff? But like if someone who is like white gets, you know, has a crazy hairstyle, it's not seen the same way. It's not seen as unprofessional. Whereas the black hairstyle is not even crazy. It's just literally braids. So it starts to seep into every aspect of culture. So anything I see that kind of pushes that, which I think this trend does, I'm always against it.
Better or whatever the case may be.
So I get the question a lot about dreads or just like having hair in general being professional. It seems like a lot of parents in the black community, especially Africans, believe that having hair is not professional and it makes you look ghetto, raggedy, whatever the terms are, man. Obviously, I'm a young man and I have hair. I'm growing dreads right now. And personally, I see no problem with this. If you still have the belief that black men can grow out their hair, man, like it's 2024. I thought we were past that. Especially from our parents watching this video, you gotta think about it like this. Like telling your kids that they can't grow out their hair because, oh, you might be viewed differently. Oh, having dreads make you look unprofessional. I can't blame you, but you're the problem. You're the one that's feeding into this narrative that hair makes us look ghetto or it's unprofessional, it looks unkept. So you are part of the problem.
I'm not too old to remember when a lot of content creators on this platform cut their dreads off. It was even a big deal in the commentary space. People made videos about it. Content creators like Blackboy Max or Young Don were people who cut their dreads off. And while they did it for their own reasons, I remember the reception around it where people were saying, oh my God, thank God he did that. He looks better. He looks more professional. And a lot of that was tied to just the most...
So someone is saying, why does wearing a piece of garment have anything to do with one's ethnicity? You already know assigning gender to garments successfully is quite stupid in its own right. How did we come to this? That's a deep conversation, but certain ways of dressing is associated with certain ethnicities. That's just like, we know that already. That's kind of what society has done over the years. And so if you're black, like I say this as someone that's black, so it's just my experience. Like if you're not black, it'll be hard to understand because you don't experience it. Like police aren't stopping you because you dress a certain way. But like if you're black, people assume, at least in London, I can't speak for everywhere else, that if you wear a tech fleece, you're like some sort of like criminal, or you're like doing criminal activity, or like even if you're just existing wearing a hoodie, there's something sinister going on. Why are you covering your face? Why are you covering your head? And so you get racially profiled. So it's like, I would love for there to be no association with, you know, ethnicity and clothing, but the reality is that is just kind of what happens. That's the reality of life and the society that we live in. So we can't act like it doesn't exist.
Black sentiments that I've ever heard in my life. And it's a shame because a lot of people, even though there is evidence that kind of disproves that, or it should be called out, believe that, yo, if you have a certain type of look or a certain type of aesthetic, then hey, you won't be hired or you won't be able to move up in your day-to-day life.
As a black man, you have to cut your hair to move up in this world, brother.
I don't even know. That's so nasty to say in the big 2-5, bro. So nasty to say. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Omar is the too woke friend. And trust me, I don't actually have a problem with people wearing the quarter zip. It's just a conversation surrounding it. And every time that we talk about these things, people love to sprinkle in their anti-black sentiment. I want young black men and young black people in general just to know, like, you can be yourself. You can be the individual and you can still stick to the trend. Because the reality of it is that it's only ghetto and unprofessional because you're doing it. Nobody cares when the white kids do it. Nobody cares when the Asian kids do it. Nobody cares when the Hispanic kids, I can't necessarily say. But I remember when they forced black youth to really look hard about baggy pants and bigger t-shirts, etc., etc. And now, all of a sudden, in the big 2-5, that is the go-to standard for clothing and outfits. And nobody's saying that these kids look ghetto or unkept or whatever the case may be. They're calling them stylish and fashion icons. But what people are missing out on is that all of this conversation is tied to respectability politics. And respectability politics overwhelmingly affect one group of people, and it shouldn't.
Quarter zip or Nike Tech, you deserve to be respected regardless. You can be a terrible person in a quarter zip.
Exactly. Yeah, so this guy's about to make the point that I wanted to make. It's like, it doesn't, like, whether you wear a Nike Tech or a quarter zip, like, it doesn't matter. There's literally murderers that wear both. There's murderers that have murdered people wearing a quarter zip and murderers that have murdered people wearing a Nike Tech. Like, it should be about what the person is, like what's their character, how is the person as an actual individual. But unfortunately, we're in a society where people just make so many assumptions based on like what your hair looks like or like whether you're wearing a Nike Tech fleece.
And a great person at Nike Tech and vice versa. Y'all be letting respectability politics play in your ass, genuinely. You don't have to conform to white versions of professionalism to be seen as a respectable person. Oh, I used to be a YN that drank Hennessy and wore Nike Techs, but now I'm a professional black person with dip on and drinking matcha.
And right, that's my issue with the way that people talk about it. I used to be a YN that used to wear tech fleece, and now I'm a respectable person. I wear quarter zips. Why are people making the association of like, I used to be a bad person when I wore tech fleece, now I'm a good person when I wear quarter zips? How about just wear your quarter zip? Like, why do you have to make the associations? That's my issue with it.
I know you guys are going to hit my comments and say it's just a joke, it is not that deep. However, you can demonize a lot of stuff by just making something a joke. When you guys say, oh, that's gay as hell, you're being homophobic, but it's just a joke. When a white person says, oh, that's ghetto, he's being racist, but that's just a joke. When y'all say, oh, your back is big as hell, you're being fatphobic, but it's just a joke. You see the point that I'm making here? You don't need white man paperwork to be respected. you don't.
I think all of this ties back into the professionalism conversation that we've been having over the course of the past year. You know, we've been criticizing the teachers, we've been criticizing the doctors, we've been criticizing the pilots, et cetera, et cetera. But every time that I hear these conversations about professionalism, it is overwhelmingly only impacting one group of people specifically, and really no other group gets called out about their anti-professional ways.
I think professionalism is inherently anti-black.
I love this take because people are so vehemently opposed to it when they first hear it, but after they give it some time, they're usually much more receptive. My favorite part about this take is that it immediately forces you to recognize the fact that professionalism is almost intrinsically like non-existent, and the whole concept of professionalism is just tone policing on a larger scale. I can't speak for professional cultures globally, but professional cultures in America exist almost exclusively to squelch Black concepts and Black identity.
Well,
the idea that
Yep, it's the same in the UK. It's the same in the UK.
everyone in the workplace has to look the same, has to have the same general attire. I mean, knowing what time of American history that came from kind of already clues you in on the fact that that was so that people who were poorer were not allowed to work somewhere. But even brought into today, if you wear clothes that are affiliated with Blackness, people can be like, oh, that's unprofessional, with really no basis on what that means, no basis on how that impacts your job, how that impacts your ability to work. They can just say you're unprofessional. This is not a professional attire for our professional environment.
In my experience in working in corporate America, I've seen things, specifically clothing items, be attributed to a certain group of people and also be...
Also, to the people in the chat saying it's not that deep, it definitely is that deep. This is how narratives are permeated into society. It's like things like this, slowly and surely it starts as a joke, and then before you know it, it's like a serious thing. When Donald Trump became president the first time around, I remember people thought it was a joke. People like, oh, he's just joking, he's trolling, bro. Now he's having his second term, and who knows, he might change the constitution and have a third term. That's how things start. It starts as a joke, so it is that deep. And most people that say, you know, it's not that deep, it's not something that personally affects them. So it's very easy for them to just say, it's not that deep, bro, because they don't have anything to lose from this whole conversation being had.
Attributed to unprofessionalism. And one example I know of my coworkers to be wearing Jordans while at work, a sneaker for what it's worth. And we're not talking about some crazy colorway, which shouldn't necessarily matter. But we're talking about a simple black and red colorway to go with his black pants and his red shirt. Dressing like a damn Target employee, if you ask me. But said coworker was called out by management simply due to the fact that he was wearing Jordans. This is a sneakers environment, but because Jordans had this connotation towards him, he got called out for it. Now, this is not me telling people to ditch the idea of getting any sorts of sweaters, button-ups, quarter zips, trousers, suits, or whatever the case may be, because statistically speaking, at the end of the day, that stuff does matter in an interview. And hey, call it performative if you want. Omar's not gonna pay your bills. I do want you to get a job. But I think what has to be put in the forefront of people's minds is that the goalpost is forever moving. When I was growing up, the stuff that they wear in Silicon Valley, the t-shirts and the jeans and stuff like that would have never been acceptable in a workplace. And now that is damn near the standard in a lot of industries.
Having to dress business casual or business professional is super dumb. Like, if that's how you like to dress, go ahead. But that being required for something is kind of weird. Because if you really think about it, there was probably some rich dude one day who wore suits all the time, and then that became the standard. But who's to say suits are really professional? If people started wearing suits for streetwear, then they wouldn't be professional anymore. So really, it's all arbitrary. Who's to say that a hoodie and shorts isn't privileged? Rich and conducts business, and that's what he wears. And suits be mad expensive. I feel like the concept was kind of created to price certain people out of a certain job. But maybe I'm tripping.
So now the quarter zip has become some sort of trend, and people are talking down on the way that black people have dressed over the past couple of years. The stuff that these trends and little jokes give power to is honestly insane. I'm now seeing these content creators who have been labeled as white their whole lives, you know, got picked on or bullied for the way that they speak and talk, come from the pits of, I don't know where, their corporate job, and are getting off think pieces about how black people are now trying to replicate them because they're more successful.
The quarter zip trend doesn't make sense to me, albeit because I am what they are trying to replicate. But then I realized that is the commentary. I've talked about before how there is a group of black people who genuinely does not know that black people like me...
Here we go. Here comes the black guy that, oh my God, you people are cosplaying to be me. Here we go.
...exist. And previously the idea was, okay, sure, they exist, but it's one of them in a group of 99 white people. And so this one black person is trying to be white by doing these things, dressing this way, carrying themselves in this way, etc., etc. However, because of social media, now they're suddenly being exposed to this. So it's not, oh, this one black person.
Is this guy really acting like a quarter zip is like some major discovery that people just made? Like, everyone wears quarter zips. You can get quarter zips everywhere.
Is trying to fit in with all of these white people. It's like, oh, there are actually several black men who look like this and act like this. So now it's okay because I can dress like this and be copying a black man rather than copying a white man and trying to be white. I do think it's signaling a shift because the pendulum is always going to swing. So you went to this very super casual look a mess part of the spectrum, and now you're going to swing back to people looking like they care about themselves. And especially when you're seeing hip hop starting.
Oh my God, did you hear what this guy said? Now we're going to swing back to people looking like they care about themselves. So when people say it's not that deep and everyone is joking, this guy is not joking. Listen to what he says. Now we're going to swing back to people looking like they care about themselves. So the only way in this person's mind to look like you care about yourself is if you wear a quarter zip. That might be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
The fade out of the zeitgeist.
Just give it all up. Get the anti-blackness out there.
Things, I do think that it is a small indicator of the pendulum starting to swing the other way.
Oh, you got these people, man. Just say you hate black culture and just be on with your life, I swear. Now, I do believe that there is an indicator that isn't being talked about in this whole quarter zip movement, and that is the indication of a recession indicator. You see, in the past, people used to wear business casual clothes just out and about. If you go through the different movements that Jay-Z has put on, that Kanye West has put on, Pharrell, Snoop Dogg, hip-hop, athletes, whatever the case may be, people wore polos, people wore sweaters, people wore blazers, people wore all these things. And a large portion of the reason why it was co-opted by regular people in the mainstream media is because there was no money around. But you had to have some sort of professional clothing. Hell, that's what your ancestors taught you. And you still wanted to get fly and impress. So people started to wear different business casual clothing to malls, to clubs, to gatherings, to outings and stuff like that.
If we look back at the '08 recession, it's crazy how much of the signs of it coming are reflected in what we are seeing now almost 20 years later. We can start with the quarter zips, which is not a bad trend by any means, but it reminds me of when everybody was going to parties and clubs wearing business casual in the early 2000s. A lot of people argue that trend started based on the club discrimination that we often still see today. Like if a club doesn't want black people, they usually
100%. Oh my God, touch on it. When the people in the chat saying it's not that deep, it's because you don't experience it. You don't have to deal with this shit. So I already know what he's about to talk about. There was a point in time when clubs didn't want black people in the clubs, so they would start to make the dress code things that they thought black people don't wear normally. So they would be like, there was a point in time where every club, you had to wear like dress shoes to go in. I'm sure some of you watching this, especially if you're black, you remember this. Or you had to dress up a bit smart, like wear smart casual to go to the club because they were trying to because obviously, with clubs, if they don't want black people in, they can't say we don't want black people in there because that's racist. And there could probably be some like legal ramifications for blatantly saying that, right? So they will do it in like very indirect ways. It starts with, you can't come in, no sneakers, no this, no that. Your hair can't be that way. That's how they do it, right? So that's what I'm saying.
can't just say that. But they can ban what they think black people like to wear. Thus the business casual in the club. And that marked the time period of the Great Recession, like what a lot of people like to call recession pop did. Recession pop was the music that was coming out around that time. Think LMFAO, Flo Rida, early Kesha, early Lady Gaga, Nicki Minaj's whole first album, and even early Soulja Boy. But the idea that the demand for escapist, high-energy party songs with a fun or outright positive vibe would go up at a time when your average American would value an escape from a day-to-day life being heavily influenced by the economic downturn that caused the foreclosure, divorce, and unemployment rates to spike at that time.
All in all, this is just the same story, new day for what's going on in the cultural movement and the zeitgeist of culture, fashion, politics, everything. And it all started with a damn quarter zip. There are some dog whistles laced into the conversation. A lot of the videos that I consumed when this movement first came out was a ton of light-skinned dudes telling their dark-skinned friends that they're ghetto and unprofessional, which I had a problem with being a dark-skinned brother, but I laughed it off ultimately. I do think it's cool to see that there are young people that can, you know, put some sort of professional attire on. I was scared for a little while, especially after seeing all those videos of young people going to interviews wearing God knows what. Because even though...
To be fair, he is correct about that. Because I remember there was a trend, what was it, like Office Siren? Or what was it called again? Do you guys in the chat remind me? There was a trend where women were like trying to. There was this aesthetic that was really big on TikTok, and a lot of women were using that aesthetic to go to work. They're like, I'm gonna try my office sign, and all of them were getting like kicked out of work and like fired and stuff because it's like it's not office appropriate, which is true to be fair. But I can't remember what was that trend called again. What was that trend? But it's weird that Gen Z, we literally let TikTok rule our lives. I don't know why we do that. Like, there's no like actual genuine aesthetics anymore. It's like people just want to cosplay as something that they're not. If that's what you like, if you like quarter zips, absolutely nothing wrong with wearing quarter zips. Most people in their lifetime have worn quarter zips before. But if you're just wearing it and then drinking matcha on top of that, it's just like...
is discriminatory. Hey, do what you got to do to get a job. But ultimately, things like this and Subway bringing back the $5 footlong lets me know that there is a recession coming around the corner. And hell, it is already here. I just don't want young black men to ever lose themselves in the music, the moment. You won't it. You won't never let it go. You only got one shot to be young. And then after that, you're not going to be putting on quarter zips and, dad shoes for fun. You're going to be doing it out of necessity. Might I propose a little bit of a compromise? This quarter zip right here is tech fleece material. Unk is...
And he's really correct about you'll get to a point where you're no longer doing it because you want to, and it'll have to be out of necessity. Kind of going back to the clubs. And like back then, the club dress code was a certain way. But now everyone dresses, everyone wears sneakers now. So now we're literally in a cultural and societal situation where you can now wear sneakers to the club. There was a point in time when you really couldn't. And there's some people watching this that will know exactly when that time was. So yeah, just wanted to touch on the quarter zip trend and kind of give my thoughts and let me know what you guys think. I'm sure all of you are going to be like, it's not that deep because, that's how these things go. But I personally think that things normally start as jokes and you have to point things out when things start as jokes. Yeah, Holly, the dress code applied to everyone, but I was explaining to you kind of why, even in the video, they touched on why exactly it is that the dress code was the way it was. Because like I said, you can't exactly, as an establishment, you can't say we don't want like X demographic to be in here. So you have to kind of find creative ways to kind of limit the ones or how many can enter your establishment, and like dress code was one of those ways that they use. So yes, you can still from your perspective see it as like the dress code is applied to all of us, but there's definitely like a sinister reasoning behind why there was a certain dress code at that time. I think this video lacks a central thesis. What is it this guy's taking issue with? The trend, the way the trend is affecting other ways black people dress like that. No, I think he actually, maybe you just weren't listening, but he did actually point out what his issue is with the trend. His issue with the trend, let me just tell you what his issue with the trend, it's kind of like what my issue is that there's potential to demonize the way that, let's say, some black people dress. So it's associating the way that a lot of black people dress with being ghetto, and it being associated with being a YN is words that I've seen being used online, all those kind of things. And it's associating wearing a quarter zip with being more respectable or being more serious or to be taken more seriously. And the problem with that kind of mentality is that is the same mentality, which is the reason why like the police racially profile certain people that dress a certain way and look a certain way. It's that reason. It's that kind of, understanding of things that leads to things like that. So that was his main issue with it. But I always give Gen Z the benefit of the doubt, as so many people participating are just uni students, so just having free time to do certain things. Yeah, that's true. But obviously it gets more sinister. Like obviously we saw that person that made the comment about, black people don't know there's other black people like me, and then it started to sprint into anti-blackness. You're absolutely right about things starting off as jokes, and because of popularity transitioning into a full-blown cultural issue, with even protests happening in certain areas of the world. Exactly. Oh, those dress codes were absolutely towards what are popular in black communities / culture. For instance, no fitteds, no Tims at NYC clubs. Yeah, that's why I'm like, if you're not black, and I don't like saying that a lot, but it's true though. Like, if you're not black, it's hard for you to see it, because I think when you're black and that's like your lived experience, it's so glaring in your face. It's like they literally specified, like they'll specify exactly what you see black people wear. So they'll like specify no Jordans, no Huaraches, like no snapback. Like, it's like, like, as a black person, you're just like, interesting. All you needed to say was just, we don't want black people. That's all that's left. So it's to someone like me, it's so obvious and it's like glaring, but I understand why it might be hard to see if that isn't like your lived experience. It just is what it is. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.